Take control of your health. This is Everyday Tonics.
Hey beauties, welcome back to another episode of Everyday Tonics, where I share habits that you can do every day to take control of your health. Now this episode I think is going to be one of the most important to really implement immediately, because I'll break down the most important things in life for you, okay? And it's the rule of threes. So we can go 3 minutes without breathing, we can go 3 days without water, and we can go 30 days without food. So that's the rule of threes. Of course, that's not exact, but that is just an average. Now, it's important to understand why water is so important to the human body. So our body is almost like the earth as an organism, where it's 63% water. And the most important organs in our body, like our brain, which is 80% water, our kidneys and lungs are also 75% plus water. Our muscles are 75% plus water. That's why for muscle mass, you have to drink a lot of water. Did you know that the number one cause of deaths every year is waterborne illnesses? Now, of course, it's higher in places where the water is not clean, but that just goes to show you how big of an impact clean water has on your health, or dirty water. Because you're made up of so much water that if that is toxic, that can be the biggest poison you give to your body. So water brings a lot of benefits to your body. It just makes everything flow, literally like a river. It removes toxins. It helps your joint lubrication. It helps with digestion a lot. It's really important for delivering oxygen to your cells, having water for H2O. It just speeds up metabolism, so it helps you burn fat faster, actually. And it keeps your skin smooth and nice and hydrated. And it's super important to have water for your brain, because that's what helps your brain produce more hormones and more neurotransmitters, and that's what gets your mood going. And it actually protects your brain and spinal cord, because the more water that's in your system, it acts as an absorber, as a shock absorber, so it can decrease inflammation as well. And this isn't a lot of people aren't diagnosed with this, but I know one of the biggest problems, almost everyone I look at probably has it, in America at least, is chronic dehydration. And chronic dehydration is the cause of so many pains and struggles that people aren't aware of that are happening in their life, like stress, digestive problems, headaches and fogginess and lack of focus. Isn't just your genetics. It has to do a lot with your diet and how much water you have. There's multiple factors to this, but water is one of the most important things you don't want to be missing. If we're looking at this from a ratio perspective, the most important functions in your body are stimulated by water. I mean, if you have trouble losing weight, that can be because of chronic dehydration. Now, to me, the best form of water, I've done some research, there's a lot of good waters out there. I'm not knocking on, how you filter your water and such, but common sense says that distilled water is the best form. Now, distilled water is 100% natural. We used to drink rainwater. Rainwater is nature's form of distilled water. It's dry. There's no minerals. It's just straight up H2O. And that's what distilled water is. Distilled water is a process where you steam the water, and then the steam evaporates into water. So it's just pure water with none of the impurities in it. And we've been drinking rainwater for millenniums. Rainwater is nature's favorite form of water. Plants thrive off rainwater. And we're just like plants, as we grow. And I don't only recommend to drink distilled water, because there's a lot of good sources of water. There's alkaline water, reverse osmosis. It's all okay, but that's not the route I like to go. And I'll give you a few reasons why. I'm not trying to make this complicated for myself. So I just want to have 100% clean water, and then I'll add my minerals back to it. The people don't like distilled water because it's dry. It's also slightly acidic. It has a pH of 6. So it's not alkaline water at all. And people hating on distilled water because it has no minerals, just add the minerals back. I add Himalayan salt, I add magnesium minerals back to it, trace minerals. And distilled water is really nice for a water fast, because the point of a water fast is to really get out any inorganic molecules and toxins in your body. And because distilled water is dry, it pulls and it actually demineralizes your body, which is a good thing when you're fasting. Of course, if you have a certain health condition, you want to be careful, but I really like it for fasting. Also, because it is slightly acidic, you never want to drink distilled water from plastic bottles. Do not buy distilled water that's in plastic bottles because it's acidic. It's 6.0 pH. It's going to break down that plastic, and you're going to be drinking that plastic. You're just adding more toxins. That's just really stupid. Just don't drink from plastic bottles. Always drink it from glass and make your own. And it's a slow process, but it's worth it. And just an analogy so you kind of know how distilled water works. Spring water is distilled water. It's just rainwater that ran downstream. And because rainwater is so dry and low pH and it, strips things away, it breaks down all the minerals from the rocks and from the soil and the environment. And then that becomes spring water. And I really do like spring water, but I'm way bigger fan of distilled water because I have spring water all the time. Whenever I'm traveling, I'll get spring water. But there's also, it is a gamble having spring water too. There could be things in the water. If you're not from that environment, if your gut's not ready for that, there could be some bacteria in that water that if you drink too much at once, you could get really sick. I've had situations where I was only drinking spring water on a road trip and it was in North Carolina and I got a little bit of a stomach ache and I had a little bit of diarrhea because I was only drinking spring water and I was new to that environment. You have to, if you're drinking spring water, you have to slowly get it into your system because it has a lot of bacteria in there, which is good for you sometimes, but you have to introduce it slowly. With distilled water, you will not have that problem. Now, my biggest thing why I'm preaching distilled water so much is because our source of water, I actually read an article where it was saying that it's safer to drink tap water than bottled water. I wouldn't drink any, but I'd rather drink bottled water because tap water is the stuff that's in there. I don't even test the water, but if I could, you would find heavy metals. There's chlorine in there. There's fluoride in there. There's definitely parasites. There's probably drugs in the water stream, like a lot of weird chemicals, like hundreds, I bet. So to me, distilled water, don't make this shit confusing. Just invest in a distilled water machine. It's the only safe and smart way to know you're drinking pure water, and you don't have to cause a headache anymore. And you don't have to read anymore about what's the best water and about just fucking for the rest of your life, just have distilled water, add your minerals back to it, and there. You don't have to question it anymore because it's not hard to understand. You don't need the science for it. It's just, this is what happens in nature. Now, this is the important part. Where can you get distilled water? So what I did is I bought a distilled water machine, or another way, which we have in Florida. I don't know about other states or other locations if they have this. In some supermarkets, there are water vending machines that go through a 6-8 stage process. And from what I've tested, a few of them are really good, specifically Publix. So the water distiller machine, I believe, is about $500, a little more or less, but that thing works like magic and it makes water slowly, but it's lasted me years and it's a really good investment because you'll never have to buy water again. The electricity cost isn't too much and it's way cheaper per gallon than any other source of water, definitely than buying bottled water. And if you have a family, you might have to get multiple units depending on how much water they drink. And the thing with distilled water machines, depending on the source of water you're putting in there, if you're putting tap water, it'll get dirty really quick. You'll really see how much gunk and rust forms in a month from all the shit that's in the tap water. And that shit that would have been in your body, So cleaning it out is a bitch. But that's why I don't use, my source for my distilled water isn't tap water. It's already pre-filtered water, and I just distill that pre-filtered water. Because pre-filtered water is, I don't think it's drinkable, but it takes out a lot of shit that won't make my machine dirty and clogged. Now, the second way to get distilled water, if you don't want to buy the machine, is from supermarkets. There's a lot down here in South Florida and probably other states and countries that I don't know about. And they usually have water machines that have a 6 to 8 stage process where they ionize it and they do UV radiation and then they have carbon filters and it really just cleans the water. But there's a few things you want to check for, and this is really, really important. You can't just follow it blindly and think because they have a water machine that it's good at water. You have to buy a water tester. I'll link the water tester and the distilled water machine in the show notes, but this water tester, they're $10 or $12, and it's lasted me forever. But what it does is it tests the parts per million in the water, and parts per million is the molecules in the water. If there's too many parts per million, that means there's a lot of contaminants in there and a lot of toxins. Spring water usually has 50 parts per million. Distilled water has 0 parts per million. It's just water. there's nothing in there. And some of these supermarkets I've tested, like they have 100 to 300 parts per million, and they're advertising it as clean water. And I'm like, you guys need to change your fucking filters. But from what I've seen, every Publix I go to, they're on point. I've never tested their water and it's been over 1 parts per million. So their water is like practically distilled. And for that, you could use glass jugs if you have them. It's a pain in the butt. But I just use really, really big, like the 5-gallon plastic jugs. And those plastic jugs are better because the big ones, the thick blue ones, that plastic is much thicker, so it doesn't break down as fast. And it's not perfect, but it's really not a problem because that plastic's much harder than like those gallon plastic ones that are on the store shelf. And where I live, you can find them for 25 cents a gallon, 35 cents a gallon. So I can fill up a 5-gallon jug of water and that'll last me like 3 to 5 days, depending on how much water I use for other things. Now, I really hope you guys don't like fucking listen to this and do. Now, I really hope you guys just don't listen to this and do nothing. Like, water is the easiest way to take control of your health, like 100%. Water is how I changed my health. Because when I started this, I was trying to fix my health. I was trying to like get all my categories right, figure out where my diet's wrong, what I can change. And when I fixed my water situation, everything became a lot easier, 100%. So do this and you won't have to really worry about it for the rest of your life because you'll know and you won't have to educate on this anymore because it's facts. All right, beauties. If you like the episode, just give me a comment somewhere or leave a review, show me some love. And let me know if you buy a machine or if you start getting distilled water because I want to know how it is for you guys because it really changed my life. So with that, peace out.
This is Everyday Tonics.